Did the Allfather Odin at one point or another look for the Infinity Stones in search of his own Infinity Gauntlet? We've known that the power of the stones has traded hands between some of the most powerful individuals in the universe, and several entities have built empires on the backs of just a single Infinity Stone. Celestials such as Aeson the Searcher have wielded the power of the stones to decimate entire worlds, and we know that the Asgardian forces battled the legions of the Dark Elves for control of the Ether, otherwise known as the Reality Stone. The Tesseract has circulated around the 9 realms as well, and the Time Stone has been under the protection of the sorcerers of Kamar-Taj. This all culminated with what Marvel Universe believed to be the first individual to finally assemble all 6 stones, Thanos the Mad Titan, who used them to cull half of all life in the universe. Is it possible though, that another tyrant and ruler of history in the MCU may have also sought to collect all 6 of the stones in order to inflict their own willpower upon the greater universe as a whole? But more importantly, is it possible that one of these would-be conquerors would be sitting on the throne of Asgard all of this time? It has been widely theorized that none other than Odin the Allfather sought to collect the stones before Thanos ever did. And today we'll be breaking down all of the evidence that has been brought forth from all of the corners of the internet to create a cohesive story for Odin's quest, and why Odin was ultimately unsuccessful. There are a few different versions of this theory from different corners of the internet, with a few variations in exactly how he may have collected the stones, when he failed, how and why he failed, and what exactly happened. So we'll be pulling evidence from a few places in order to assemble our own story. We'll also be sure to point out a few different possibilities, and you can decide which of these explanations you personally like the best. So with that said, let's begin with our story of Odin in his pursuit of the 6 Infinity Stones. Let's start with the basics. We know that Odin and the Asgardians are widely knowledgeable of the Infinity Stones and their capabilities. We see this across the original Thor trilogy and with Thor himself. Throughout Thor the Dark World, ancient Asgardian texts are explored in order to understand the power of the Reality Stone in greater detail, and these texts refer to the Ether as one of 6 sacred artifacts that is depicted as a liquid form. This implies that ancient Asgardians knew enough about the Infinity Stones and their origins to understand them at this level, and the Warriors 3 know that the Ether and the Tesseract were both Infinity Stones. We know this because they take the Reality Stone to the Collector, and they state that it's not wise to keep 2 stones so close together, so they know that both the Tesseract and the Ether are 2 respective Infinity Stones. After the first war with the Dark Elves though, Odin's father Bor hid the Reality Stone away on Midgard. Many have theorized that Odin would likely be aware of this, seeing as he was the next in line to inherit the throne, and it was his father who led the battle against the Dark Elves. We also know that he had access to the Space Stone as well. The Red Skull in Captain America the First Avenger refers to the Tesseract as the jewel of Odin's treasure room, implying that Odin had possession of it at one point or another. On top of this, the Space Stone is hidden away in the very same Nordic village in Tonsberg where the Frost Giant conflict took place, adding even more evidence to this theory. Tonsberg, as well as many other Nordic cultures, worship the Norse pantheon of gods, and this could be the case if they had some interaction with the Norse pantheon, allowing them to record their encounters in written text and then pass on the stories. These stories were later misinterpreted as mythology rather than historic fact, and the Norse pantheon was widely regarded as a mythological figure. But the fact that remains is that Odin and his forces had visited Norway before, and seems to have access to the Space Stone here. It's even possible that after using the Space Stone, Odin was the one who encased it in the Tesseract and hid it away on Midgard. The rest of the stones are a bit more difficult to deduce however, but we're going to try our best. Some versions of this theory claim that Odin was able to obtain the Power Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Time Stone, and if he was able to complete this, then he would have been the one who scattered the remaining stones across the cosmos after Odin abandoned his quest to conquer the 9 realms. But there's not much in the way of physical evidence to support this idea, only conjecture. The only other stone that we know of which fell under the domain of the 9 realms was the Time Stone, but as far as we can trace, Kamar-Taj has been protecting it this entire time, generations even. For humans, however, generations take place within the lifespan of just one Asgardian, so it's entirely possible that Odin is the reason why the Time Stone ended up in the 9 realms in the first place. But more on that in just a minute. Most curiously though, Odin had a replica of the Infinity Gauntlet within his treasure room, which Hela would refer to as a fake. But how would she know that it was a fake Infinity Gauntlet, and what the stones looked like if she hadn't ever seen a real one? Well, we believe that Hela has seen an Infinity Stone. After all, the dwarves already had a mold for a weapon capable of harnessing the power of the Infinity Stones in Infinity War. If Odin knew of this, or possibly even commissioned the design, it's possible that Odin used the power of the stones in his conquest to take over the 9 realms with his eldest daughter. She bore witness to the use of the Infinity Gauntlet, and watched him use the stones that he had to conquer the 9 realms, to build the Asgardian Empire from the ground up, assimilating forces, building riches, and expanding his reach deep into the cosmos. At this point, we know that the 3 stones in the 9 realms were the Tesseract, the Time Stone, and the Reality Stone. According to Thor the Dark World, Bor hid the ether away until the events of the Dark World begin, but if Odin ever dug up the ether, it makes sense that he would lie about ever using it, or would have at least not mentioned that he ever used it. We also don't officially know where or how Thanos got the Mind Stone, which is never shown on screen, so it's theoretically possible that this was at one point in Odin's grasp. This would also explain why it is so close to the 9 realms when we first encounter it. So why did Odin stop? This is the big question. What led the Allfather to abandon his quest to collect the Infinity Stones and conquer the rest of the universe, especially if he was so close? The answer appears to be that he learned the location and the nature of one Infinity Stone, the Soul Stone. Assuming the Soul Stone is still residing on Vormir at the time of Odin's conquest, then he could have learned not only the location, but the sacrifice that it required of him, the sacrifice of one which he loved. Upon discovering this, Odin may have realized that much like Thanos, he loved nothing except for his daughter. If Hela was the only sacrifice the Soul Stone would accept, then it's possible that Odin realized that the collection of all 6 stones was outside of his grasp, and he decided to abandon his journey, instead focusing his energy at the time on rebuilding Asgard and its legacy of one of peace and benevolence. If this is to be believed, then the only stones that were still out of Odin's reach would be the Power Stone, which was located beneath the flooded ruins of Morag, and the Soul Stone, as well as the Mind Stone being questionable. He could have decided that conquest was not the proper way to rule and to care for a kingdom, which enraged a Hela who did not fully understand the circumstances behind this perceived betrayal. This may have led to the fight between Odin and Hela, which ended with her imprisonment and her outrage. After banishing Hela, he returned the Reality Stone to its hiding place, and he didn't tell anyone that he had ever taken it. He then encased the Space Stone in the glass enclosure known as the Tesseract in order to hide away its true nature, allowing the fake Gauntlet to continue to appear as real. The Tesseract could have been hidden away on Asgard as a jewel of Odin's treasure room, and Odin decided to separate the rest of the stones. However, many of the other stones he had been able to collect were scattered around the galaxy, so that nobody would be able to wield such devastating power ever again. We believe Odin did this in case he ever needed to get the stones again. This may be why they were kept in the 9 realms rather than completely shipped off to the uncharted corners of the universe. He knew that if he ever needed the Time Stone, he could go to Earth and take it, but for the time being, he left it under mortal protection. After all, they still fell under his protection, so if anyone ever tried to come for them again, Odin would know. His gauntlet was then abandoned, as the power it could wield was far too great, and somewhere along the way he hid it away in order to either serve as a reminder of the error of his ways, or it was constructed as an illusion. If he carried a gauntlet with 2 or more real Infinity Stones, and completed it with fakes throughout his conquest, he could use the power in his grasp to fool the cosmos, making them all believe that he had all 6 stones, forcing entire kingdoms to surrender without ever raising their arms in conflict, as they feared his now limitless power. This cruel illusion he could conjure to inspire fear may have been a deciding factor in his grand conquest, and his fake Infinity Gauntlet, complete with 6 fake stones, which was stowed away in his trophy room as a decoy, while the rest of the stones were scattered. Any who sought to wield the stones may have believed that the Allfather Odin possessed all 6, and that the only way to obtain them all was to launch an attack on the realm of Asgard, facing one of the most powerful militaries and beings in the universe, bearing the might of Odin, Thor, and for all the attackers knew, the power of all 6 united stones. This would have discouraged many conquerors from attempting to use the stones to conquer their share of the galaxy themselves, but the story of Hela and Odin's vast conquests would be largely forgotten to time and buried by Odin himself, who was ashamed. But anyway, friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think Odin sought the Infinity Stones first? And is Odin the one that actually scattered the stones across the galaxy? If so, why do you think Odin ultimately stopped? And what do you think would have happened if he was successful in obtaining all 6 stones? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today. Hulk smash that subscribe button for more Marvel lore, and have a great one.